ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Being told they can't hear me. I got to hold it close. Okay. Let me do it this way. Is that better? Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. As I'm sure you know, this is a town hall for the purpose of discussing the water quality the quality of water in our water supply. We have two main objectives for the meeting tonight. The first is to provide you with the most current and up-to-date information that we have up to today. We have our consultant team from CHA here. They should be able to cover everything that we know up until this point. The second objective for the meeting then is to solicit public comments, questions, and feedback. You will be permitted to ask questions. We will go long enough for everybody who's here who wishes to speak will be given an opportunity to speak. We will go in several rounds, which in a moment our senior executive assistant will explain how the conduct of the meeting will flow, but everybody will be afforded an opportunity to make comments, to ask questions, and then once everybody that wants to speak has had an opportunity to speak, we will then open it up for additional questions. So if you have follow-up questions that you didn't quite get the answer to, you'll be able to come back up and speak again. So that's how the format will go, and Ms. Barlow will explain that in detail. Prior to starting, a few housekeeping things. For those of you who may not be familiar with this building, the restrooms are in the very back, in that corner. We will have breaks in between the rounds. There'll be short breaks. However, if you need to use the restroom, this is entirely up to you, but I would suggest that you get up and use the restroom rather than wait for the breaks, because there's 175 people in here who are going to want to use the same restroom at the same time. So I think you get my drift. So it's not considered impolite if you need to use the restroom or step out to take a phone call. We completely understand. Don't hesitate to do that. This is obviously a public meeting. We do have our city clerk here who is keeping minutes of the meeting. And therefore, just like our city council meetings, it's very important that we have one speaker at a time so that we can keep the record clean. And so the one speaker at a time will be speaking from that microphone when their name is on the record, and what they say will be recorded. So, with that being said, this is much more relaxed than a normal council meeting because you get to ask a lot of questions, but we need one speaker at a time, please, so we can keep the record straight, which means that you can't shout questions from your seat or heckle the speaker or anything like that. Please don't do that, because we want to be respectful. Everybody in here are our friends and neighbors, so we want to be respectful to our neighbors. So please, no yelling from the seats or no heckling or anything like that. But if you, like I said, if you ask a question and you don't think they really hit the nucleus of the question, you can come back up in the next round and ask for clarification. So we will go until everybody's had their questions answered, as well as we can answer them. Now keep in mind that we will tell you everything we know at this time. There may be some questions that we just don't know the answers to yet. I say that because on this request to speak forms, there's a place where you're asked to put your email address. Now, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you want to speak and you don't want us to have your email, that's fine. But if you put your email address, that'll enable us to say, well, they asked about something that we didn't know the complete answer to, and maybe we can touch base with you when we learn the full answer. So that's entirely up to you, but there is a benefit to putting your email address. Okay? Did I cover everything? Okay, Mrs. Barlow, why don't you explain to everybody how this will go?
Good evening. Is this working? Can everybody hear me?
Really close.
Hello? Can everybody hear me? Hi. I'm Jeannie Barlow. I work in the city manager's office. Welcome, everybody. Like the mayor said, everybody's going to get an opportunity to speak. All we ask is that you fill out the speaker request to speak forms so that we have your name for the record. What we're going to do is I'm going to call everybody in groups of 5. So the first 5 I will call, and we have on deck seats here. So if the 5 people I call come sit on these chairs here, then one at a time you can get up and questions or comments. You will have up to 5 minutes. You're welcome to use the entire 5 minutes if you'd like. We have the colors are up there. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow will blink And then at 5 minutes, there'll be a very annoying buzzer sound. So you will all have an opportunity to ask questions. If you're not in the first round, we will take a break. You will have time to fill out your forms and leave them with Mary back here. She's collecting more forms. So if you come up with a question that you haven't heard and you would like to ask it, just fill out a form and we will call your name and everybody's going to ask their questions and everybody will have an opportunity to speak. So with that being said, I would like to invite the mayor and the council to please come up in the front row because we're having the presentation. And after the presentation, then you can go back to your place at the dais. So after you ask the question, if you would return to your seat so the next person can come up to speak, be greatly appreciated. We have seats in the front. Yes, these are just for the presentation. When the questions start, then you're welcome to come up and take these seats if you would like. Okay, that being said, City Manager Carlos Bahia will start off.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you all for being here this evening. So we have 3 presentations for you. First one will be mine, more of an overview of where we are in the context of the issue of PFAS. Following myself will be the representatives from CHA. They'll be talking about what they're planning to do. And then we will also have our city attorney, Ernie Mueller, talk about the litigation that we're involved with regarding PFAS. So let me start about what is PFAS. So we've heard a lot talked about this, and PFAS is a broad term for a class of thousands of different chemicals characterized by strong carbon-fluorine bonds. And this evening, you're going to hear us talk specifically a lot about PFOS and PFOA. Those are 2 of the more common types of PFAS, and those are the 2 that the EPA in recent announcements has said they're going to be regulating in 2031. So we're going to spend some time on that subject. Now let's talk about the history of PFAS. So since the 1940s, now for several decades, companies such as 3M, Chemours, DuPont, and others have manufactured PFAS substances. And PFAS is found in, if you check your homes, you probably have PFAS in many, many places. You probably even have it on your clothes here today. PFAS is found in many products, including nonstick cookware, water-repellent clothing, like raincoats or dry wet clothes, stain-resistant fabrics and carpets, cosmetics, contact lenses, older firefighting foams, dental floss, fast food containers, and products that resist grease, water, and oil of all varieties likely have PFAS. So PFAS can enter the environment as they are manufactured, as they're used, or after a product with PFAS is disposed of, for example, if it ends up in a landfill. Now, because it's been found that PFAS do not break down, they're widely present in soil, water, air, animals, and people around the world. In fact, there's one estimate that's been put out there by an entity called the Environmental Working Group that estimates that 99% of Americans have PFAS in their bodies. So it is a pervasive subject, a pervasive chemical. So recent court action has demonstrated that since the 1960s, chemical companies have known that PFAS chemicals are persistent in the environment and they pose a risk to human health. Yet these companies continue to sell these chemicals without disclosing those risks. In terms of our water utilities, so our water system, like most water utilities, if not all water utilities, we do not create PFAS chemicals. So that is not something we manufacture, not something we plan to add to any kind of water. And in Florida, the responsibility for enforcing the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act rests with the state, and Temple Terrace's water system meets all current Florida drinking water regulations. So I want that to be clear. We meet all the current regulations that are in place today. Now, at the federal level, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and I apologize, there are going to be some acronyms here. I'm going to try to define those acronyms as I go, because I know it can be confusing, so I'll do my best with that. So the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the federal entity tasked with protecting and safeguarding this country's environment, every 5 years, they issue something called an Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule, okay? Now, there's another acronym, it means UCMR. They've done this since the late 1990s. So every 5 years they do this as a way to gather data about contaminants that might be in water that are not being regulated presently. So it's a way for them to do a fact-finding mission. They gather data from drinking water systems around the country, and then they use that data to come up potentially with new regulations or new health advisories. So back in 2013 to 2015, the EPA issued UCMR 3, and the 3 is just the sequence. So the first one back in the 90s was UCMR 1 and 2 and 3, etc. UCMR 3 required testing for PFAS chemicals. Temple Terrace, our water utility, we tested at the time based on the requirements for UCMR 3, and we tested for PFOS and PFOA, and we found that we were non-detect. In other words, we did not meet the minimum reporting levels that the EPA had set for UCMR 3 testing. So those minimum reporting levels back then in 2013 to 2015 were 20 parts per trillion for PFOA and 40 parts per trillion for PFOS. And we were below those, so we were non-detect. Now, parts per trillion, this is another thing. You're going to hear a lot about parts per trillion. I imagine the scientists can probably define this a lot better. But I've seen, and you've probably seen as well if you've done any research on this, the best analogy, it's a part per trillion is the equivalent of a diluted, if you think of it like a drop of ink, you dilute a drop of ink and you drop it in the equivalent of 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, that would be a part per trillion. So these are real small levels we're talking about here. So measuring them is quite a challenge. So back in 2013 to 2015, again, Temple Terrace, we were non-detect. So the EPA took that data from the UCMR 3, and they issued a health advisory in 2016. And that health advisory recommended, this was not enforceable, but they recommended to the country's drinking water systems that the maximum contaminant level for PFOA and PFOS should be 70 parts per trillion combined. Okay, and that was their governing recommendation since 2016 through the early 2020s. And of course, we were under that. Now let's fast forward. UCMR 5, so this is again the rule every 5 years, so UCMR 5. You may ask, what happened to UCMR 4? UCMR 4 did not test for PFAS. They recommended testing for other things, so I'm going to reference UCMR 5 because that was the next time that the EPA asked drinking water systems to test for PFAS. So, if you remember, in 2016 the EPA had said, hey, the recommended maximum is 70 parts per trillion combined. Under EPA's UCMR 5 testing, they've now changed that maximum contaminant level that they want tested for is now for PFOS and PFOA is now set to 4 parts per trillion. Okay, so a pretty significant decrease. So Temple Terrace, we did testing, and our test results came, are actually displayed right here on the screen. So we have 2 water treatment facilities. You'll hear them referenced here this evening, Whiteway and Sunnydale. The Whiteway plant is the bigger of the 2. And we tested in March and we tested in May. As part of the UCMR 5. And what you see is in March for PFOA and Whiteway, we had 8.1. In May, 8.7. PFOS in March in Whiteway, 19.3, and in May, 18.8 parts per trillion. At the Sunnydale plant in March, we had 10. In May, 7.7. PFOS was 19.5 in March, and then 16.4 in May. We've also done additional testing of the water. So these numbers that are right here on the screen that I just referenced, that a lot of the community is familiar with. So these numbers were at the point of entry. You'll hear that term, point of entry. What that means is the finished water coming out of the treatment plant. So they test at the finished water level. What we did on July 30th, thanks to the work of our consultant, CHA, is they actually tested again the point of entry, but they also tested each of our wells. So we have 10 active potable water drinking wells. And those wells were all tested individually. And that'll be important as we go down the road because it'll give us a clear indication if there's what the PFAS levels are in each of those wells. So some wells may have very little or no PFAS, other wells may have more, and that can help us in terms of finding an appropriate treatment solution. And we're also going to be doing additional quarterly testing into 2026 again to determine the average level of PFAS because again that will dictate, all that information will help dictate the type of treatment that we need to do. So the UCMR 5, so the EPA is taking that data. In the midst of collecting that data, the EPA issued its first ever enforceable maximum contaminant level for 6 PFAS compounds in drinking water. So what this means, when I say enforceable, it means they're proposing a regulation. Before, they were simply advisories and recommendations, and now they're saying we're going to propose a regulation. So the EPA is requiring drinking water systems like ours to complete initial monitoring by 2027, which I just mentioned we're doing right now, and to implement solutions to reduce PFAS levels that exceed the proposed maximum contaminant levels by the year 2029. I will tell you, the EPA earlier this year announced that they are proposing to postpone that enforcement, so postpone the start of the regulation until 2031. The reason for that, largely, I would imagine, is due to the fact that this is a national challenge. We're going to talk about that just shortly, so you understand the magnitude of this challenge across the country. The EPA also announced in May of 2025 that it will be repealing the proposed regulations for all but the PFOA and PFOS, hence the reason we're focusing on those two here this evening. Now let's talk about the national challenge. So this is data that comes from the EPA's actually data sets and also from environmental working group accumulation of the data. So there are 9,323 public water systems in this country that have detected PFAS. The EPA estimates that 165 million Americans are served by water systems with detected PFAS. The EPA also estimates that up to 6,700 drinking water systems nationally have detected PFAS at levels that are higher than the proposed 4 parts per trillion future enforceable level. So we, Temple Terrace, we are in this number. We're one of 6,700 utilities that are all in the same boat right now. We are above the 4 parts per trillion enforceable level for regulation that will go into effect in 2031. This map on the Environmental Working Group's website, and invite anyone to visit their website. It's an interactive map. And you can see here graphically the magnitude of this challenge. So if you look, you'll see that drinking water above the proposed limit. So these are utilities that are like us today that would be above the proposed 2031 regulation today. They're in light blue. So you can see this is light blue on my screen, but it turns out it looks a little bit like green, doesn't it, on yours? So it's the majority, it looks like the majority of the country, particularly the eastern seaboard and the state of Florida right now. So this problem, again, is very, very pervasive across the country. So what are we doing? So we have engaged the services of CHA. They're our water resources consultant. CHA was actually working already on a master plan for our water treatment facility, and we've asked them to take the regulatory component of their plan, focus it on PFAS, and accelerate it so they can bring to the city council and the community potential treatment solutions early. And they're also going to be talking about this evening, they'll be talking more detail about this, but they'll also talk about not only permanent solutions, but potential interim solutions. We've also established a water questions page on the city's website. There's information there today. We'll continue to add information. These presentations, we'll put these presentations on there as well over the next several days. We have also engaged the services of outside legal counsel to pursue compensation for the costs related to PFAS from the companies that produced it. And the city attorney will talk more in detail about this. But again, I want to reiterate, the companies that produced this and knew that these had health concerns, those are the ones that right now are in the midst of litigation and settlements, and we are part of that process as well. We've also established a PFAS task force. In that task force, several of my staff were meeting every week, and each person is also taking on different meetings. So we have met with our neighbors because we want to learn, what is everybody else doing? What situation are they in? So Tampa Bay Water is one of the larger water suppliers in this region. Tampa Bay Water provides water to 6 governments, Pinellas County, Pasco County, Hillsborough County, part of the city of Tampa's water supply, St. Petersburg, as well as Newport Richey. And we met with them, and they also have PFAS that's above the levels that would be in effect in 2031. So they're looking at potential solutions as well. They don't have solutions in place, just like we don't have solutions in place. They've got issues for some of their wells. They actually draw water from a variety of sources. So there's some ground well water they pull out. They have river water. They also have ocean water. They have a desalination plant. So they've got some issues with some of their ground wells and some of their river water. So they're looking at a filtration system, for example, just for their wells that they told us will probably cost them right now, based on today's cost, $30 million. And that doesn't count what they're going to have to do for their river water. We also met with the city of Tampa, and they also have PFAS. And they're looking at a treatment solution for PFAS as well. The city of Tampa is looking at a system that they're testing as a pilot called a suspended ion exchange. This is, you'll hear ion exchange. These gentlemen will talk about ion exchange this evening. Suspended ion exchange is a technology, according to what the city of Tampa officials tells us, that has not been used in the U.S., but they're looking at it potentially. And for the city of Tampa, they're estimating it'll cost them $190 to $200 million for that treatment solution. Hillsborough County, we met with them as well. And again, they buy water from Tampa. So the secondary reason for meeting with the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County is because we want to look at, is there a potential to regionalize this? If we're all looking at treatment solutions, does that make sense? Can we connect our systems? Because if you connect your systems, because right now our system in Temple Terrace is a standalone system. So if you remember a few weeks ago, we probably got some alerts about our Sunningdale water treatment plant and the storage tank at the Sunningdale plant. We were making a repair to its foundation, so we took it offline. So that's a 500,000 gallon tank. Now, when we took that offline, the pressure for the entire system was really hard to maintain, because a 500,000 gallons of water has now been kind of eliminated from the system temporarily. So actually, we thank you for your collaboration, your cooperation with that. You helped us maintain the pressures during that repair period. But if we were connected, for example, to the city of Tampa or to Hillsborough County, it could be just a matter of opening a valve and letting the water flow in to increase the volume. So during that repair period, for example. So at a basic level, just for an emergency, that makes a lot of sense. Secondly, again, from a treatment solution perspective, is there a way that we can partner so that we can acquire perhaps part of our water from another source if they're doing treatment, and we can use some of our wells differently to keep the PFAS levels below the EPA standards? So those are things we're looking at right now. So the technical folks are working on treatment solution alternatives, and we're trying to figure out if there's any partnerships that would benefit the city as well and accomplish the same thing, and maybe it's a bit of both. We also met with the City of Pompano Beach staff. City of Pompano Beach is in Broward County in South Florida. We met with them because South Florida on the whole, their PFAS rates are higher than ours and higher than most of this region. So we wanted to get an understanding of what they're doing there. We also met with Dr. Viraj De Silva, who is a leading global expert on PFAS. Dr. De Silva is a Tampa resident as well. He volunteered to talk to our task force. Is Dr. De Silva here in the room? Oh, he's in the back. Okay, great. Thank you. So Dr. Silva, he's actually here today. He was very helpful in educating our team about some of these challenges with PFAS. We've also met with Congresswoman Laura Lee's staff, and the reason we did that is because under the prior federal budget, there were dollars to assist utilities with some of these costs. The current budget does not have any money to assist utilities in terms of grants with these costs. We just wanted to raise the awareness of that issue with the Congresswoman's staff. So they listened to us, and I imagine that they'll be looking at this issue as it continues. We, of course, have been meeting with CHA, our consultant, and we also met with a utility rate study consultant, because at the end of the day, if we get settlement dollars and we are able to get some grants, hopefully at some point, there may still be a scenario where we, as a utility, have to issue a revenue bond or debt in order to pay the balance to do one of these treatment solutions. Again, the numbers we're talking are $20, $30, $40 million or above potentially. So if we do that, we have to have a rate study done to understand how that will impact the user's water rates. So that's something we wanted to learn that process, and that's why we met with that particular person. So, and we will continue to meet with people as we move forward and report back. Now, so we're leaving PFAS. I just want to also just reiterate that we, on a daily basis, we test for other contaminants that are required under the state of Florida. We sample our city water system daily. Across the system, we do regular testing, and we provide that information on an annualized basis in our annual water quality report. And I want to touch upon one issue that came up in the annual water quality report that I think is some misinformation about or misinterpretation. So I just want to clarify that. So I apologize for the abrupt nature of this question, but this is the way it was being presented, so I want to make sure it's clear. So if you can't read it from the screen, it says, was the city's water contaminated with fecal matter in 2024? The answer is no, and let me explain where this comes from. In the water quality report, there was a reference to So we sample the water every day. So there's a reference to 3 positive samples for total coliform. Total coliform. Coliform is a family of bacteria, and under a subset of total coliform is E. coli. E. coli is a more precise indicator of contaminated water in terms of fecal matter. We never found E. coli. We never tested positive for E. coli, neither in primary tests or follow-up tests. There was no E. coli. So when we have a positive sample, we have to do follow-up sampling. We did follow-up sampling. Follow-up sampling did not show coliform. Now, I will tell you, and this is very candid, and I apologize for this, one of the things that when the staff did the follow-up testing, they did not follow the pattern to the T, the way that the Department of Health mandates. They did follow-up testing, but they didn't follow all the steps involved. So that's the reason why there was a reference to it in the water quality report. The staff has been retrained, and in fact, to make sure that we had confidence in the system, we hired an independent third-party lab to actually sample the entire city, all the water across the entire city, and retest the water, and we did not show any coliform. So as far as we're concerned, that was a false positive, and so we just want to make sure that that's clear for the public. And we placed 10 years of our water quality reports, the last 10 years. They're on our city's website, so you can go through and you can see the history overall. We have a very sound system. As I mentioned, the city's website, this is a screenshot of it here. We have a permanent water questions page now set up. There's a button on the main page, the home page. You can see the arrow pointing to it right here for water questions. So I welcome you to check that out. We'll have more information, like I said, including these presentations on there in the remainder of this week. And you may leave here today and you thought, oh, geez, I missed the question. I really wish I had asked that. So we have this QR code here. Feel free to take a picture of the QR code. It'll take you to a quick little form, basically just your name and what your question is. You can submit that to us at a later date, and we will get answers to you. So I want to thank you again for your attention this evening, and I want to welcome up the representatives from CHA.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Barton Jones. I'm a senior principal engineer for CHA, and I work out of our Tampa office. I'm 80 years old, and I've been doing this for over 55 years. And I have been delegated by CHA to be your client service manager. What that means is I am your advocate internally to CHA. I work with our execution teams to make certain that we perform as you have requested on the timeline that you have requested. Tell you a little bit about the firm. We're a national firm. We have over 2,000 staff scattered mostly along the east coast of the United States. CHA was established in 1952, and we're a full-service engineering firm. We have been in Florida for over 40 years, and in fact, we have over 250 staff located in 7 offices throughout the state. I'll tell you a little bit more about our team's expertise in just a few moments. I would like to introduce folks that are here tonight, and also some members that could not be here but are directly involved in the team effort for the project execution. As I mentioned, I'm the client service manager. My young engineers look at me and say, you're kind of like the State Farm insurance agent or the farmer's insurance agent. You know a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two. Because I have been a consultant most of my career,
I do have some public service experience. I was a director of utilities for Dubuque, Iowa, and I was an assistant chief engineer for the Spartanburg water system in South Carolina. So I kind of have a sense for what's important to you as a consumer of the water. With me tonight is Alan Defloff. Alan is our principal in charge, and he is the Florida team leader. Internally, let me tell you what that means to us. He is our regional manager that's responsible for the 4 offices that go across the I-4 corridor. He's got 23 years of experience, all in the Tampa Bay area. Our technical director is Dr. Chandra Mysore. He is working as a nationally recognized expert in all things PFAS. So he will be directing our technical team. He's got over 40 years of experience in both planning, design, and operation. Ed Talton is your project manager. Ed has over 36 years of experience, and his specialty is master plans. For 36 years, Ed has practiced engineering in the state of Florida, focusing upon the development of master plans that look to make sure that your assets operate and maintain their function over the planning horizon, which in this case is normally 20 years. Let me tell you just a little bit about what we've done close by. And I have 3 examples. On the left, you'll see the city of Vero Beach. Right now, we are helping them understand their PFAS issue and what may transpire and how they can solve their issue to get below the MCL, the maximum contamination limit. We just recently finished a pilot study for the town of Bel Air. They are using a technology known as reverse osmosis to reduce the level of PFAS in their system. And we did the pilot study to determine what kind of pre-treatment is necessary before we introduce the water to the reverse osmosis system. We're doing that so we can come up with a plan that is economical and optimal. That's the purpose of a pilot plant. And last but not least, there's a water treatment plant in Stanton, Delaware. That plant is operated by Veolia. Veolia engaged CHA to assist them in the design of a removal of PFAS from their water treatment plant at a scale of 30 million gallons a day. They have 42 pressure tanks, 12 feet in diameter. You will have nothing like that if you were to go with the same technology that Stanton uses. So that's briefly what CHA brings to the table. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Talton, your project manager, and Ed will walk you through the process. What have we done? What will we do? And the timelines to help you understand and appreciate that we're in it with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bart. All right. First off, I'd like to applaud you guys for coming tonight and watching on TV, because it's people like you that are going to make changes in this world. We need to turn this around, what's going on. All right, I want to add to what Bart said is we have been local in Florida, and we have full-scale plants operating that are using the same processes that remove PFAS, right? We have full-scale plants, City of Orlando, Seminole County, City of Castleberry, Polk County is state of the art. We've got a lot of facilities that are up and operating using the same processes that we'll be using to remove PFAS. Just to clarify, our role, CHA's role with the city, is number one, we do want to complete the master plan because we need the water plants to operate another 20 to 30 to 40 years, right? Things, as they age, they need repair and replacement. So that's one thing. Secondly, and what you're here for tonight is the PFAS response. And we are on the ground running right now. We were out at the plant this afternoon. We have performed the first of 4 quarters of sampling, as the city manager said, on the wells, and that'll give us a really good idea what's happening. We're looking at a short-term PFAS plan. This is no fun, right? I mean, we've got to deal with this, and the city, everything I've heard them say is a fast response, urgent, and we've been moving as fast as we can. We just basically started on this less than 10 days ago, right? So we've already accomplished a lot. But we have more work to do. We're going to perform some bench and pilot testing, and those are small scale treatment plants, and we'll talk about that and show you some pictures in a second. And we want to estimate our capital and operating costs so that we can go for funding and try to minimize the impacts to the customers for getting you good water. There is good news in this, in that you're in a relatively lower realm of PFAS levels, and it's one that's treatable, right? We know how to treat and remove PFAS. Getting rid of it is another matter, but the technology is well tested, well proven, and it's in full-scale use. So that we know. What we're going to focus on is which one of these technologies to use. Granular activated carbon. You see those in all your most of your point of use filters, like your filter pitchers, your refrigerator filters. Those all use granular activated carbon, and that's really good for removing things like PFAS, pesticides, things that that are small and normal treatment plants maybe can't remove. There's another technology, ion exchange, out there that also is promising, and as Carlos said, the city of Tampa is investigating that on a bigger scale. Lastly, reverse osmosis, and that's we use the membrane to physically separate out the PFAS from the water and put it in a smaller stream, right? And each one of these has their pros and cons. The city happens to have some really hard water. How many of you out there have a softener, right? So yeah, you have some hard water. So in that case, the membrane technology can also actually soften the water and remove PFAS at the same time. So that may be something we're looking at. You have a current lime softening plant, and that's a possibility as well. The good news is the technologies exist. We just need to figure out which one is the right one for the city of Temple Terrace. All right, we mentioned the pilot study, right? What is that? So people mention it's pennies on the dollar. Instead of building a brand new big plant, you test it out on a small scale first, right, for pennies on the dollar. So what that allows you to do is A, prove that you can remove the PFAS constituents, right, and B, estimate the cost to be able to remove those. So that's what we're doing for you. We'll be running a pilot over the next 2 or 3 months. Boyer Wang, sitting right in the third row there, is our pilot chief, and he will be out at the plants running that. And we're going to come up with a report and conclusions in a relatively short manner, on the order of 3 months. But we'll go through that schedule at the end as well. Let's look at the big picture here, because protecting your watershed and where your potable water comes from is an important thing, right? Like up in New York, right? City of New York, you say, well, they don't protect their water. Actually, they do, because they have the Catskill Mountains, right? And all their rain falls in those mountains, and they collect it and send it to the city. They don't let development, they don't let industry work in those watersheds to protect it from contamination and pollution. What's happened to us, which everybody else, now we have contamination in our aquifer, which is a really productive, nice aquifer, and now we have to clean up that contamination. So from that standpoint, protecting your watershed is key, and that's something everyone can participate in. You see the 2 stars there? Those are your 2 water plants. One of them treats about 1.5 million gallons a day, Sunningdale, and then there's the larger White Way that treats let's say 2.5 million gallons a day. So those two plants supply all the water to the city, and both of them have tested positive. So what we're looking at here, though, is in the future, the city is already working on it, is steps to protect our watershed going forward, right? How did this get in? How do we keep it from coming in? Is there anything we can do in the groundwater to mitigate the PFAS itself? And if not, then we'll handle it on the treatment end. You've seen these numbers. Carlos showed them, but I want to break them down a little more. So this is your current regulatory status. These are proposed rules, and they are going to go into effect 2031. And you are above two of the key contaminant levels, that is PFOA and PFOS. Luckily, those are two of the more treatable PFAS constituents, but I want to go over a couple of the other ones here. There is one called Gen X, which, thank you, which is relatively hard to remove. So what we had was non-detect. That is excellent. That is good news. The EPA, they regulated two of these PFAS components, but there's several others. So they created this basket where you do a calculation of all the other ones you have and you total it up to a hazard index. And that's what this number is right here at the bottom. And they calculate to a 1.0 is the limit. You cannot go higher than that. And we're pushing right up against it because of this guy, PFBS. And that's a surfactant that was used. And it is pushing us up a little higher there and causing this to push against one. So that's another one. And one of the things and the important things of the pilot study is we want to see what it does, how we get the PFBS out as well as the PFOA and PFOS. So that's the purpose of the pilot, is to look at some of these other constituents that also have an impact on us complying with the regulations and go from there. All right. Another big consideration is interim treatment, right? What can we do right now to treat this, right? Is there something we can plug into our water plant and take this PFAS out of the water, right? So there is. The answer is there is. These activated carbon and ion exchange manufacturers, they typically come in a configuration that is a steel pressure vessel. So you see these full-scale pressure vessels here. They're pretty big things, but that's how you load the carbon, the activated carbon, or the ion exchange into those vessels, and you run the water through the vessels and treat it. These things are pretty easy to manufacture, and they can be shipped on trucks. So there are at least 3 or 4 manufacturers that will rent you these things and put the material in it to treat the water on a short-term basis. It's big in mining waste, right? When people come in and they short-term mine something, they'll bring these temporary treatment facilities into those and treat the water. Now, here's the bad news is that since everyone is facing these PFAS issues, these are a little hard to come by right now. So the manufacturing times are high, and the vendors are doing the best they can. There's new manufacturers coming online, but we are already in talks with 4 manufacturers to try to get this to see what the cost of these things would be for the city, and if they're feasible, and what the availability would be too. So there's also similar units on the RO side, reverse osmosis. They come in like a tractor trailer truck, so they load the skids onto those, and they'll wheel the tractor trailer up to your site, and off you go. And the thing is, these are not cheap to rent, but we'll run the costs, and the city and you will make the decision. All right. Another big question when you're in this situation is point of use and point of entry treatment at your own house, right? And point of use means you've got a sink in the kitchen and you want to put one on the kitchen sink. Point of entry means you're putting a whole house filtration system on your house, right? And I didn't see that until probably 2017. I did a master plan for Fort Lauderdale, and they're on the Biscayne Aquifer, which looks like chocolate tea, right? So a lot of folks down there had whole house RO systems on there because the water came out colored from the city. So You don't have that, but you do have a concern here, and these are the options. So the most important thing about the point of entry, point of use, is to make sure you get the certifications right. You want to look for the NSF 53 for the granular activated carbon filters, right? And then you want to look for the NSF ANSI 58 for the reverse osmosis systems. There's also, in addition to NSF, there's third-party certifications. There's organizations that have tested certain point-of-use filtrations to see how effective they are. So there's that information. I highly encourage you to, to research this and look for what's best for your own family. But the two big questions come down to, do I do my whole house, or do I only do a certain sink or two, or a refrigerator? So that's a question you might have to answer yourself. I don't think in this case, whole home systems are warranted. They're expensive and they're high maintenance, but that will be up to you. The key to this, and that's why I highlighted it, is maintenance. It's just like a water plant has to be maintained. These filters have to be maintained also. If you install them, you got to change them out, right? Or else they're just going to either not work or grow bacteria in them and actually hurt you. So you have to be careful. It's the maintenance that and getting a good certified that will get you in the right direction. I gave a few examples here, and the EPA.gov gives you a good rundown as well. All right. We're getting close to the end because I know you guys are chomping at the bit to get questions in, and we're ready for those. But impacts to the city, and this is where it's really a bummer, right? We've got to upgrade our treatment plants to get rid of this contaminant and get it down to levels that are acceptable to the federal regulators and to you guys, right? I mean, I think you guys are going to come down to making this decision, and your elected officials, right? So point of use devices, those aren't free. Whole house ones can run from $15,000 down to $5,000. The smaller point of use ones you can get for $100 on Amazon, right? So, but there's a cost involved with you putting those on and us having to put them on in certain places as well. So we've also got a timeline for design and construction here, and we happen to be in the middle of the PFAS frenzy right now, and so suppliers are busy. Those things aren't gonna move as fast as we could normally move them. And lastly, increased operating cost. These activated carbon filters, they have to be changed out once a year, and that's every big vessel. That's 50 grand. You got to change out the vessel. That's $50,000, right? Reverse osmosis, you've got a pump, you've got chemicals to use. Those you've got to get rid of the concentrate. So each one of these has a cost associated with it. But I think, as Carlos mentioned, we're looking at right now. We showed two options, but 5 million gallons a day would treat all of your water. 9 million gallons a day would treat the capacity of your plants. You don't need to treat that right now, but we put that on there just for perspective. So this 5 million gallon right here would treat your entire system right now. So that's what we're mostly. All right. So next steps for the city. I put down a big one, continue watershed and well field protection, right? We have to protect our water supply, right? I mean, that's why we're in this situation. Somebody, dumped something and it traveled in the aquifer and got to us, right? So this is something, from let's just say from a water management standpoint, we need a protected watershed where we pull our drinking water from. We need to analyze the pending PFAS well field results. We were hoping to get them back today, but they should be back this week, and that will give us an idea of the scope of what's the solution is. We want to complete the pilot study and make sure we can remove that PFBS, see how feasible those plants are, and see what it would cost to run these plants for a year, right? So we have to make a decision. We're going to boil it down to life cycle costs, capital costs, operating costs, and that translates into what rates you pay, right? So we want to minimize that, and we're going to look for that. Complete the PFAS short and long-term plan. Since the master plan and this came up, we have accelerated the PFAS solution, and we're drafting that solution right now. We will need a little bit of pilot results and some more testing to get that in, but we are working on it as fast as we can. and we are going to come up with a PFAS plan that's good, and a couple of options that's good for you and good for the elected officials, right? Lastly, we do need to ramp up funding support and to implement these solutions. Did anybody see that movie Dark Waters out there? Have you guys watched that? Yeah, I highly recommend that you watch it, because those folks got settlements and payments and they received nothing. So even if you win a settlement, that doesn't mean you're going to get money, right? These are the folks up here that are fighting for you. That's who we need to get behind, and that's who we need to focus on, making the solution and getting it paid for. So that's all I had. I appreciate y'all's time, and I'll turn it back over to Carlos. I think the last thing was a quick schedule, and this does show you a lot is going to happen over the next 3 or 4 weeks, right? So we'll have the pilot plant up and operating probably in about a month and a half, and we'll be producing draft reports. We'll have the sampling results. I'm sure the city will publish as soon as we scrub through them and QC them, and then we're going to be pursuing funding. There's a deadline, August 31st, that we want to try to make in to get some additional money. I think it is going to take lobbying our local, state, and federal elected officials to get something, a chunk of money to get us down this road. So we are attacking it from both ends, all ends, and we appreciate you guys coming again.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to turn it over now to the city attorney, Ernie Mueller.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ernie Mueller, the city's city attorney. I'm not going to be very long. I know you all want to get to your questions, but I would like to take just a minute or two to brief you on the action the city is taking to address the PFAS situation legally and what the process is going to be going forward. So, to begin with, all the litigation, all the lawsuits against the PFAS or the PFAS litigation has been consolidated in one court, and that is the Federal District Court in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, the city has engaged 3 law firms who will be working together to represent the city in this multi-district litigation or multi-district settlement. We have our primary contact is going to be a local firm, Manson, Bolvis, Donaldson, and Tanner. They've been brought aboard because they have a very extensive experience in environmental issues in the state of Florida, and are familiar with the Tampa Bay water industry. They have affiliated with 2 law firms, one in New Orleans and one in Dallas, and both of those firms are specialists in this multi-district litigation or settlement. Currently, we are involved in participating in one of these settlements, and that is with, well, actually it's 2. It's the 3M company and DuPont. And there will be more litigation and settlement to come. But our outside attorneys will then be working with our staff members to document the evidence, to make the claims, and to evaluate the city's potential recovery from existing and proposed class settlements. And we do plan on getting some settlement money on this to help pay for it. So I think this is an important piece of information. In this, in the 3M and DuPont, they have created this demarcation date of June of 2023. And those drinking water providers who detected PFAS prior to June of 2023 were placed in phase 1. All other providers were placed in phase 2 unless those providers opted out. The The city was designated as a Phase 2 qualifying class member in both the 3M and DuPont settlements, and we did not opt out. Now, important thing here is in Phase 1, the settlement payouts were scheduled to occur this summer of 2025, and you've probably been reading or hearing on the news those settlements that are beginning to come out. I believe the city of Tampa got a settlement. Phase 2 settlements are scheduled for next summer of 2026. So that's when we plan on getting some payouts on this. Okay. So a settlement claims administrator has been appointed to evaluate the claims and to distribute settlement funds. And there have been 4 separate funds that were created for the benefit of Phase 2 class members. First is a settlement fund, and in just a second I'll give you a little more detail on that one. But there's also a testing fund, which will reimburse the city for the testing that we do. We have the special needs fund that allows the city to seek compensation for any funds that it has expended related to PFAS. This claim would be used to seek compensation for the funds that the city will be spending on its consultants in determining how to develop a plan to address PFAS and for the implementation of that plan. And then there's the supplemental claims fund, which would compensate water utilities that see future increases in PFAS contamination or new PFAS contamination. Now, the settlement fund itself, that's going to be divided up among the water utilities that have filed claims, and there's going to be a formula that they're going to take into account. That's going to be the size of each water utility, which is going to be measured in flow rates, and then the level of contamination found in each of the water utilities' well sources. So balancing those two, a larger water utility, especially if they sell water, will have a larger flow rate and may receive a larger portion of that settlement pie. But also, keep in mind, a smaller water utility with a more dramatic contamination level may qualify for larger settlements than some of its larger neighbors. So that's really all I have at this time, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on legally. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Barlow, I'll turn it over to you. If you would, there are seats up here that we will not be returning to. There's a row of seats that have 6 seats up front here that are available for anybody who'd like to come up and sit down.
Okay, we're going to get started. We have about a dozen requests to speak form in our first round. After we're done with the dozen speakers, we will take a brief recess so that anybody else who has a question, who has not filled out a form, can visit Mary at this table over here and put your questions in. So when I call the first 5 people, please come sit in our on-deck seats, and then one at a time, approach the microphone, state your name and city of residence for the record, and you'll have, like I said, up to 5 minutes to speak. Please speak into the microphone so that it can pick up your voice. And with that, I guess we'll get started. So our first 5 speakers are Carol Dell, Michael Crowell, Greg Votar, Cherie Harrington, and Daria Navan. And I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. Do we have our other 2 speakers? Okay. So I guess we will start with Carol Dell.
I assume the microphone is on. My name is Carol Dell, and I live in Temple Terrace. And as a point of reference, I've lived here for a long time. My husband and I raised our children, and our grandchildren were raised in Temple Terrace also. And I mention that because my questions and my concern are dealing with the past, the present, and the future. Now, I think my question has already been answered, but I need to have it dumbed down for me a little bit. So my first question is, how long have these PFAS levels been at this concerning level? And the second question is there a reason this level is concerning? And by that I ask, have we always had this level, but is it now becoming a concern because the EPA or other regulatory bodies have changed the standards? That happens in a lot of things, and I'm just wondering if that might be what has brought it all to light. Not that I'm thrilled to death that we've had these before, but I'm just wondering how come all of a sudden now, according to that map, we're like turquoise almost everywhere in our country. My other question, and it's probably a little far-fetched, but I'm just wondering if those ETO gases that come from that sterilization plant in Telecom Park that people are talking a lot about and that we've actually heard about for the last couple of years, if those have any effect with our water supply. And even if they don't, I think a topic for another day is what that effect is on us. And I worry about the people who work over there. I worry about the people that live over there. And I worry about the firefighters that sleep 24, that don't sleep. They don't sleep 24 hours. They are there 24 hours a day around that particular plant that has those high levels. So those are my questions and concerns. Thank you.
Sorry, I neglected to mention that the questions will be addressed after each round of speakers have finished. Okay. So we have Michael Crowell. You did not want to speak? So Cherie Harrington.
Hello, Cherie Harrington, for the record. For approximately 72 days, I've been a resident in Temple Terrace. I have been the Chief Operating Officer of the Chamber of Commerce for almost a year. And I come from Washington State 3 years ago. And I was just back there for a month. My daughter got married and I was drinking water out of the tap. And I have first 50 years of my life. Can you still hear me, Brian? For the first 50 years of my life, I drank water out of the tap. I served water to my kids out of the tap. I gave my chickens, my goats, my garden, everybody got water out of the tap. Do you want me to stop talking? Keep going. So my concern is for my personal health because I have multiple autoimmune disorders. And my roommates and I just have almost gone through a 5-gallon jug of spring water from Zephyr Hills in 2 days. So washing all my vegetables and fruits and everything. So I'm here as a concerned citizen, as well as someone with the Chamber of Commerce concerned for all of our businesses in the area as well as out. So at this time, I don't have any questions. I just want to share a little bit of who I am, and I'm looking forward to continued information. Thank you.
We have Daria Navan.
Hi, good evening. My name is Daria Navan. I've been a resident of Temple Terrace for 21 years. In full disclosure, I'm also a professional engineer and I work on PFAS. So I'm very interested in this issue, as someone who's been consuming this water and also as someone who works on these types of issues for my career. Thank you very much for the presentations this evening. They've been fantastic. Really appreciate the city addressing this, in the manner that you have. I do just want to bring up one issue that I haven't really heard people talking about. Our wells are screened in the upper Floridan aquifer, and they're relatively shallow. And I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware that there was a U.S. Geological Survey study that was done. It was published in 2007, where they looked specifically at the vulnerability of specifically well number 4, Temple Terrace, well number 4, to contamination. And as part of that study, they installed about 15 monitoring wells around Temple Terrace. If those monitoring wells still exist, I don't know if they've been abandoned. I think it would be worthwhile to sample those wells. I think that could give us a better idea as to the distribution of the PFAS. And as part of the study, they also noted that a lot of the water that we're getting, especially at well number 4, which was the focus, is coming from the superficial aquifer. So, they looked at the age of the groundwater and they saw that it was, 50-50 basically, superficial aquifer and Floridan. And the superficial aquifer is a lot more vulnerable to contamination. So the other thing that they did was they also looked, they sampled at multiple depths within the Floridan aquifer. And, as you get deeper in the Floridan, you don't have as much influence from the superficial. So I'm wondering, maybe as a parallel track, if we could maybe look at, investigate, getting water from deeper portions of the upper Floridan, or maybe even into the lower Floridan, which I know can get brackish, but I'm just thinking, that if we should look at that, that could actually save us a lot of expense if we don't have to, add treatment to our plants. I mean, the numbers that we were seeing are enormous, and we're not a very big city, so, that would have a tremendous financial impact. It would be a lot cheaper, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the solution, but I do think that it's something we should look at, tapping deeper into the Floridan to see if we could maybe find some water that, was not contaminated with PFAS. Also, I just wanted to, you had mentioned looking at the well fields and doing some well field protection. Good idea, but the problem that we have in Temple Terrace and a lot of Florida really is that we have a karst aquifer. So what that means is that we are getting water from miles away. There are channels, there's sinkholes. I mean, like well number 4, it's actually tapped into basically an underground cavern. We're also pulling in water from the Hillsborough River. So the PFAS could be coming from miles away. We'll just never find it unless we do a lot of dye tracer testing, which is expensive. So just something for maybe my fellow citizens to understand that we'll probably never really know the source of this. So we just have to deal with it. Thank you.
Okay, that was our first 5 people. Turned out to be 3. I'm going to call 5 more names.
Jeannie,
Yes, please return to your seats. Thank you.
Jeannie, Miss Barlow, Mrs. Barlow.
Yes.
So we're going to take questions that we're taking questions after each group of 5.
Okay, let's have some questions.
So we're answering
answers.
the questions. So speaker. So let me just pull the microphone here. So to Mrs. Dell's question about how long has the PFAS levels been at this concerning level, and if it's becoming a concern because the EPA is changing its standards, I just want to revisit what we talked about in the presentation. So if you'll recall, in 2013 to 2015, the EPA standards at the time, we reported that we were a non-detect. Temple Terrace is a non-detect based on those PFAS chemicals. And that led in 2016, if you recall, to the EPA nationally saying an acceptable level, at least for PFOA and PFOS combined, was 70 parts per trillion. And then you fast forward again now to UCMR 5, so in 2023 to 2025, then now they're saying it's 4 parts per trillion. So yes, the regulations have definitely changed pretty substantively. And so when we tested back in 2013, and then we tested again because the EPA said go ahead and test again in 2023 to 2025, is which we're in this period. That's when we found we've got the levels that we have, that we, both the consultant and I, put on the screen, and hence the reason, because of the new 4 parts per trillion versus the old 70 parts per trillion, for example. That's the situation that we're in right now. As far as what the last speaker mentioned, I'm going to turn it over to Ed, because I think she probably engineer would probably be a better person to respond.
Oh, sure, and that was excellent information, and local knowledge like that is important to get this done right. So when we talk well field protection, yeah, we may have to go to a new well field. It may just not be protectable. So that is the case. We just sunk 3 or 4 of these deep supply wells in Osceola County, and they run $6 to $7 million a pop per well, and you probably need 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them. So there's cost to each alternative, but that would give you a little more peace of mind and a little more protected, well field. So everything she said is spot on, and we totally agree with it, and it should be looked at.
Okay, we're ready for the next round of speakers. When I call your name, please come sit in our on-deck chairs. Brooke Hansen, Gary Tubb, Tara McDaniel Brown, Tom Cross, and Ed Levine. And our first speaker is Brooke Hansen.
Hi, everyone. I am Brooke Hansen. I live on the corner of Whiteway and Gillette, and I appreciate that you're all working on the big long-term solutions of this problem. My questions have to do with some more immediate concerns. Is this going to be a disclosure issue for people who want to rent properties or people who are selling their properties, just like you need to disclose other types of things? And I don't expect that you would have the answers to many of these questions, but I hope that you'll raise these questions in future council meetings. And also, obviously, we just heard this news, so it could be a disclosure issue for future renters and home buyers. But what if you're a current renter like myself, and you're concerned about this and would like to move out of Temple Terrace? Is that grounds to break a lease, and would the city support that? So that's one question I had. And also, I'm concerned about the restaurants and the food and beverage purveyors across Temple Terrace, and I've been afraid to eat or drink anything. But I did see that Starbucks has an RO system, Bora Bora has an RO system, but I've also seen some other restaurants posting things on social media that, oh, we just installed a filtration system, so we're 100% good, come eat and drink here, but I'm not sure. So is the city going to include some of these things in future health department permits for restaurants who are using the water to give people drinks at their table, or to make soup or rice or other kinds of things that really absorb the water? So I'm just curious about the whole restaurant and food issue. And also, many of us, as my roommate Cherie said, are out buying lots of Zephyr Hills water, and we're going through it like crazy. And we can kind of afford it, I think. I'm not totally sure. But what about all the people in Temple Terrace that I've seen on social media who can't even afford to buy drinking water? And maybe they're a single mother with 3 kids, and they're having their kids drink the water and bathe in the water. Is there anything we could do as a community to maybe help low-income people access a filter, or maybe some of us could donate drinking water and they could get it? So I just want to make sure we're trying to take care of everybody in our community. And as devastating as all of this is, and we're facing this across the country, I'm a gardener. So yeah, I looked it up. Extension offices all over the country have done the research. Your leafy greens and your legumes suck PFAS right up. So I pulled all my leafy greens out. I'm not going to eat them anymore. Fruits pulled them in a little less so, but now I can't garden anymore. So that's very devastating to me. And I'm just wondering if we've mentioned that to people. In the wintertime, we're mostly watering from the municipal water because we don't get a lot of rain. So that's a concern, and I've seen there are studies out there on that. And have we also reached out to our farmers and producers in Temple Terrace? Like maybe don't give this water to your animals, maybe get a filtration system, you know, because that's the food and the stuff that we eat and we drink. And I'm also wondering with the kids going back to school today, are messages being sent out through the school that the school has municipal water, it's in the water fountains, it's in the cafeteria? Are we using that channel just to try to encourage people to get filters and get drinking water? And the other question I had was really about the pharmaceuticals in the water, because I've looked at the research, and this is a countrywide issue too, and most municipal systems are showing 30 to 60 pharmaceuticals in the water. Have we looked at that? If we're going to put something in, can we really make great water and get the pharmaceuticals out there too? So just some thoughts, and thank you very much for all of your efforts. And for the audience here, as upset as we are, we're all upset, we're concerned, and we're thinking about many things. How many of us have bought products that were produced by 3M or DuPont? How many of us are using Roundup and chemical fertilizers and shampoos and other things that are filled with these chemicals? So this is all of us too. Let's examine all of our own lives and our own chemicals and try to protect our watershed better. So I think we're all in this boat together. I think it'll be really good if we could just think about that. You know, if we could all work together, let's change our personal habits, support the city, and support people who maybe can't afford filters and water. Maybe we'll be in a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I have Gary Tubb.
My name is Gary Tubb. I am 82 years old. Seems the record so far. And my neighbor across the street, she is 85 years old. And my other neighbor, she is 89. And the point is that we've been drinking well water because, and that's one of my second questions. So it's not only that you have water supply, but we have people that are on well water, and we have people in Temple Terrace that are on well water, and that needs to be addressed. Well, my first question is, did you know that we had a Superfund by EPA over about 100 yards across 56? And that was in 1991. That there was a company called Gulf Coast Battery, and then it changed its name to Gulf Coast Recycling. And they destroyed batteries right across the street. In 1991, it was discovered by children. Now, by the way, that is now covered over by an apartment complex. And it was discovered in 1991 when children found shredded lead in their playground. So there is a report that was done on this, and I would like to know, my first question is, I'd like to know if our attorney or anyone else is following up on this Superfund and what potential of being able to look at that for monies to help in dealing with the situation we have now. So that's my first question. Second question is, as I said, a large number of the, I believe we have in Temple Terrace, according to the census, 11,131 people. Now, not all of those people have water from the city. In fact, I would suspect a large number of the people have well water. And we need to be thinking about what are we going to do with those people. We can't just say, sorry, you're not connected. We have to do something about that. In addition, let me think of what I had to say. I did Superfund. Yeah. Oh, this. So, one of the speakers did mention that there's something that you can do as an individual if you feel really like our last speaker about how desperate they are to find some resolution now as opposed to in 2031. And one of our speakers did mention that you can get from Home Depot or from Lowe's a device that would filter your water as low as $150. You drink out of the sink, because where are you going to be cooking? You're going to be cooking where the sink is. You don't need this expensive device to flush your toilet. You don't need this expensive device to, to take a bath. The key is the water you drink. That's the concern. And so I would like that speaker again to identify more appropriately the type of devices that we could install under the sink. And I would like to see our water department, which I've had very good work with. I've worked with them. They're very clear about all of the bills and that sort of thing and why it went up, to identify the type of device that you and cost that you would have, just like they have a handout for irrigating of our lawns. Do we need this, except for our gardeners, this expensive device for our my time's up.
Mr. Tubb, you're more than welcome to fill out another speaker form if you want to continue. No, you can fill out another form and you can speak in the next round. Okay, the next speaker is Tara McDaniel Brown.
Good to see you all again. Thank you again for having the City Hall meeting for us and all the residents. I lived here for 35 years, a little bit more than that, but the safety, health, and welfare of the residents is in jeopardy, and it has been. From what we've heard, it's lasted longer than what we've found out. I wanted to follow up, this is my question, I wanted to follow up on our request for all the records per the Sunshine Law. All records we are requesting are the files, anything related to the situation, all documents, any federal or state EPA conversation, letters, emails, text messages from the mayor all the way down the line. If it hasn't, I am requesting it formally now. I do know that it has been requested. I'm still waiting on a response from that and would like that. I'm not sure how people realize how this is affecting our residents. I've spoke to many. It's affecting, it's bothering, it's bathing ourselves, bathing our children, our infants. Hot showers increase your PFAS. Your pores are open. Guess where it's going? You're washing your face. You're brushing your teeth. I've lost 2 teeth this year, not from my teeth being a problem, but my gums are a problem. The last 3 or 4 years, myself and one of my children have health issues, some serious, and all of them have other things that can cause them, but one of them is underlying water. We're talking about cooking, cleaning, animals. Water is our life, and it should be safe, which it is not, and currently it is not. It may be national, but I care about Temple Terrace. Again, it still feels that you're downplaying the importance of our city's health and welfare. And it has felt like political smokescreen. From the original thing that came out, microscopic as you can see. Not every resident got this item. Not every business got this item. I have taken off work today, matter of fact, evenings to visit businesses and to speak to residents. I've yelled out my window to notify people. I've asked numerous people, have they gotten this? No, I didn't get it, but I never fail to get my water bill, which is what this should have been in. It came in its own envelope. I got this from a neighbor's sister, okay? Not at my home. On page 4 of this water report, it talks about us. Please share this information with all the other people who drink this water, especially those that have not received this notice directly. And I mentioned this once before. Why is that the residents' responsibility? So I took it upon myself to do that. I used my car today, filled it up twice, drove around through parking lots, through Publix, through Winn-Dixie, down Fowler, in front of Planet Fitness. I yelled out my window to notify people. I'm too busy trying to raise good humans. That's my goal. I should not be having to do the work that the city should have been doing and still should be doing. Thank you very much for the signs all over the city. I appreciate that, to notify of the meeting. I am now adding to my budget water, not by choice. And I'm using it many places in my home. No, I don't need it to flush my toilet, but I need it to make mac and cheese for my children. I need it for my son who has severe eczema to wash his body, his face, which I keep in the bathroom for him to use. No one uses sink water to brush their teeth anymore. I don't have the money to be adding to my own budget something that is not free, but it should be clean, and it's not. I should not have to add these systems or filters to my water. In 2 weeks, we have went through 3 5-gallons of water. I now have Water Boy who delivers to me. That's fine. I basically said all.
Tom Cross?
Thank you. My name's Tom Cross. I'm a resident of Temple Terrace for the past 22 years. I'm also a professional engineer and a clean water professional. And I've worked from the Keys to Daytona to the Tampa Bay area. I appreciate the town hall meeting tonight, city council meetings leading up to this. I have been involved in a lot of public information on different projects. Maybe moving forward, the city could make the report a little more clear for the public to read. That might not be a bad suggestion. I just really had 2 bookkeeping questions. One, the city manager had mentioned in the discussions, we currently don't have any interconnects with Hillsborough County, which we've got some Hillsborough County folks here. Actually, I think they left. And City of Tampa. So is that in the discussions with PFAS? Has there been any discussion about at least looking into getting any emergency interconnects with either system, and perhaps even Tampa Bay Water? We're not a member government, so that's not something that we could necessarily tap into, but at least as an emergency connection. And then as CHA goes through the study, once the final recommendations made, has the city started thinking about how that project will get designed and delivered? Is it going to be a traditional design bid build with CHA's contract extended, or is it going to go back out? Maybe a CMAR, progressive design build, just how to there's a lot of stuff, moving parts right now, but in a year we're going to be somewhere, and where are we at with that? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker of the round is Ed Levine.
Thanks for the opportunity to raise questions. I live in Temple Terrace, have lived in Temple Terrace for 40 years. I moved here when I was 2. Questions in 2 parts. On the technical side, when you say 4 parts per trillion, what does that exactly mean? Does that mean that if you're converting it to ounces, that there are 4 ounces of PFAS for 1 trillion ounces of water that is free of PFAS? What exactly is parts per trillion? And given that you've got such a small indication of PFA in the water, few parts per trillion, how do we know that the tests are reliable? What's the protocol to ensure reliability, and what are the data telling us about the degree to which the tests show consistency and stability over time in terms of the content of PFAS? The other technical question is, what exactly is the connection? How do you draw the connection between the amount of PFAS in the water and some problems with health and mental health? What do you have to do? Do you have to drink water consistently for 10 years, 5 years, 2 days? What's the connection between the amount of PFAS and the occurrence of any physical and mental health problems? On the practical side, I'll voice some concern with the previous speaker, because I tried on several occasions to get a hold of the person named in the report to ask some questions about the report itself without success. I never got a call back. So that needs to change. And finally, it seems to me that it's really not my part to pay for filtration and other steps to mitigate problems in the water. I'm paying the city of Temple Terrace to deliver me clean water, and I pay a reasonable amount to do that. And the fact that I'm not getting the pure water that I'm paying for is a concern. It seems to me that the city is responsible for any mitigation. And if they want us to do something about it, they should reimburse us for any expenses that we have in conjunction with filtering or otherwise purifying the water. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer the questions, and I may be passing the microphone down to the representatives from CHA for a portion of this. Mr. City Attorney, any insight? Would you like to take the microphone for the question regarding disclosures, potential disclosures for people who want to rent or sell properties or grounds to break a lease?
I am not aware of a requirement yet for that type of disclosure, but there may be. I'm not aware of that. Might make for an interesting new area of law if it becomes a basis for breaking leases and stuff like that. But I don't have any answer for that at this time.
Next question or comment was about restaurants. And we will, as part of our task force meetings, we'll also be reaching out I know some of our staff have in the past, to the Department of Health, to just see if we can get on the same page with them in terms of any sort of outreach regarding this issue. And so that's what we'll do. In terms of potentially help for folks accessing a filter, I think Ed had mentioned different filtration options as low as $100 on up, filtration systems. We did check with Hillsborough County. We can dig a little deeper with this. They do have programs in their water services department for folks who may be of low income, at least for water bills and things like that. We don't know, but we can open those conversations. We've talked with the, as I mentioned in the presentation, we have talked with the Hillsborough County water department staff, and we can inquire because, again, this is also an issue that impacts the county. Again, they have PFAS just basically in the same categories as we do. So we'll inquire with them as to whether there's a program that might be county-wide. The next question was, have we looked at pharmaceuticals in the water and in terms of the potential filtration solutions? I'm going to hand this over to Ed.
Thank you. To answer that question, we have not yet looked at anything that is not regulated. So we're focused on the regulated constituents right now, and that's something we will consider, though. It's a good comment, and while we're in the process of fixing up the water plant, we might as well look to the future as well, because there's another PFAS coming right behind it. So I did want to also mention to the woman who was the gardener, there are something called RV water filters, and they screw onto a hose bib, so you can get those relatively cheap for like $15 that will screw onto your hose bib, and you can feel a little better about gardening there.
Next question from Mr. Tubb was a comment about Gulf Coast Battery, the Superfund site. So we are aware of this site. It's several decades old, as Mr. Tubb has referenced. We will make that information, if they don't already have it, we'll make sure that CHA has that to look into in terms of the research. There was a question about looking at well water issues for people who might be on not on city wells, excuse me, but on their own personal wells. We will look at that as well right now. I don't know if that's, well, actually, let me turn it over to these folks, see if that's, any of this would be applicable to folks who have individual.
Yeah, and you know, as I was getting ready for this meeting last night, I was watching Bob Bocock in a Georgia PFAS meeting, and a lot of those folks up there, you would feel better about yourselves if you watched that. But they are pulling from wells, and they have PFAS levels in the tens of thousands of parts per trillion. So from that standpoint, there are rules about notification of well users that have to be followed legally. But it is something that I would advise. You know, I don't know that you want somebody drinking, you know, high levels of PFAS from a well in your service area. It's definitely something that we should address in some way. So.
Thank you. And Ed, do you want to pull up your slide with the filters, the different filter options? You might escape from that, because that question came up about some devices, again, referencing to devices that people could look to install. I know in Mr. In Ed's presentation, he had a slide that talked about that. We'll put that up on the screen. You can have that as a reference going forward. And we had a question about the request for records. I believe we know which request for records that is. We are working on that. There was a open-ended, the request was very broad. And the requester, this actually earlier today, narrowed the scope of the request, so we anticipate having that request fulfilled shortly. We also had a question about the emergency connections to Tampa and Hillsborough County. That is absolutely the case. So when we met with City of Tampa and when we met with Hillsborough County, we have two purposes for that meeting. Again, we wanted to learn about their PFAS situations and what they were doing about it. But we also wanted to broach that conversation about making that connection. As I mentioned, having a system that's connected in a region from a regional perspective is a lot better for our individual water systems in terms of particularly for emergencies. Again, you can open the valve and you provide some volume of water that can mitigate for a lot of things. So we are having those conversations. In fact, the likelihood is that the Hillsborough County is more viable to connect with us. at least from a regulatory perspective. And they've already started working on trying to find the closest locations to make those connections. Now, we're talking about this may be a ways. We have to install certain pipelines, things like that. We're investigating that with them. They're also working on potentially what an intergovernmental bulk water rate could be in case they make the connection and they want to sell us some water, again, to mitigate some of our PFAS concerns. So we're looking at all of those things, and the county have been great. So I want to thank the folks, if there were any folks here from Hillsborough County, I want to thank them. I want to thank the folks from Tampa Bay Water and the folks from the city of Tampa as well. Again, we're all kind of dealing with the same issue, and they were very helpful to us. Next question was, will the next stage be design, bid, build, or design, build? At this point, I'm not sure where we are with that.
Yeah, and we're not to that stage as to what is going to be the fix for this. So until we know it, we're only going so far, right? So our scope is so far. We're going to figure it out and go from there. There are creative ways that we can reduce the cost for the city, like pre-purchasing equipment from suppliers themselves to reduce taxes and some of the contractor markup. But in the end, you're going to need a contractor to install this. So there are multiple methods, and we're going to get the one that works best for the city. But our scope is pretty much going to stop when we come up with the PFAS plan.
If you could hold on to that mic right there, because I think these next questions are probably within your wheelhouse. Mr. Levine asked about 4 parts per trillion, and I know this is a hard concept for a lot of us in terms of understanding what that might mean. So what does that exactly mean, 4 parts per trillion? Can you give them an analogy that would help understand that?
Sure. And when you see concentrations like that, it's mass divided by volume, right? So it's the mass of the PFAS sitting in a volume of water. So the analogy he gave was pretty correct, except for it's a mass of a weight of PFAS sitting in that giant volume of water. I'll give another analogy that I've seen. It's if you filled your bathtub up with sand, with grains of sand. Those are about 1 trillion grains of sand in your bathtub, right? So you would drop 4 grains of sand into your bathtub, and that's the limit for PFAS, right? So it's weight over volume, but from that standpoint, those analogies work pretty well, I think.
And Ed, so knowing that we're talking about, with your example, 4 grains of sand in a bathtub full of sand, how do we know, the next question was, how do we know that the tests are reliable to get down to those minute amounts?
Oh, sure. And there's, the city used a national lab. We also used a national laboratory. They have quality control standards. There's only about 2 or 3 in Florida that do it. So we know who those are, and and that's who we used. And so the results, again, the question was, are they consistent? And from the city's first sampling to the second sampling, the results are very consistent. So I don't know if you saw the numbers, but they're about the same, and they're about the same for both of your plants, which kind of tells you it's a little widespread, and it's spread throughout the city. So from that standpoint, I think there was one other question about, the city paying for point of use, and my only comment to that is, you pay the city, right? You fund the city, so it's actually coming from you as well. So it's going to get there somehow. But the bottom line is, if that's what you feel to protect yourself and your family and those around you, I think we as a community have to step up and get those things put in.
And then there's a comment made, not necessarily a question, about not having gotten a call back. I apologize for that. Mr. Warren Phillips is right here, the Director of Public Works, and we're going to try our best to answer your questions not only this evening but going forward. Whether they be an email or phone calls, etc. And we're going to put more information again on the city's website so that you can refer to that anytime you'd like. And I think that may be the bulk of the questions for this round. Yes. Oh, yes, sir. Yep, thank you for reminding me. Okay, I had it buried here. So what is so the question is the connection between PFAS and health problems. You want to talk to that?
Because this is not a new problem, right? It's been studied for 30 years. There's epidemiological studies that have been done and blood tests, and what have you. So there's some really good data out there. I suggest you go look for it and educate yourself. So, I mean, the it's it's not fully known. Let's just say that, but there have been studies done. That movie Dark Waters explains some of the testing that was done in that town, and so we know certain things about health, but as far as what your exposure was, that's hard to calculate and estimate. So this is an unfortunate situation, and it's one that the city didn't create, but now we've got to deal with what the cards we have, and that is get the water clean and protect ourselves as quick as we can, right? So that's basically what has happened in the past. You're welcome to look at some of those epidemiological studies, but it runs the gamut. The Georgia example that I went through, Lou Gehrig's disease is 1 in 100,000 people, right? This small town had 30,000 people, and they had 5 Lou Gehrig's disease, right? I mean, okay, so we sort of know that's one of the outputs, right? So, but again, it depends on exposure. It depends on the length of time you're exposed to it, and those studies and the outputs of those are available online.
Well, we can go to the next.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more requests to speak form in the original dozen. After these 2 speakers, we will take a brief recess to let everybody who still wants to ask a question fill out forms and submit them. So I'll call the next 2 speakers, Anne Frechette and Justin Wynn. Oh, Justin. Is Anne here? Anne Frechette? Are there people in the audience who still would like to fill out forms? Okay. So is everybody who's filled out a form submitted their forms? Okay, so we keep going? Yes, all right. Jim and Lila Young. Karen Mikulski. Mead Lewis. Mustafa Ismail. And Manos Mandarudi. So if Jim and Lila Young will approach the microphone.
My name's Lila Young, and we're relatively new residents here to Temple Terrace, and we dearly love it. We're coming from South Florida, West Palm Beach, that has had water problems, and I'm kind of very well acquainted with them. And I just have to say that I'm very impressed that you all have taken this on. I saw the signs out, and I have to tell you, a lot of this wouldn't be done in a big city like West Palm. It's the truth. My husband was born there in West Palm. We lived there over 50 years in a very old home. And luckily we got a 100-year-old one here too, as well as West Palm. So we're making the transition over, and we really love it. I do want to say I came tonight to see if my questions would be answered, and I had a slew of them, and you hit them. And the point that I feel like I've got such great neighbors. One lady's lived across the street since she was a child. The one next door, she takes her husband, who's in the hospital right now, taking dialysis 3 days a week. The other one on the other side of me, her mother's in Concordia. And, you know, you get concerned about these people. I'm a type 1 diabetic, not a type 2, type 1, for many, 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 many years. And I just think it's great that you're taking this on. You realize the seriousness, and I think it means a lot to people that are seeing this through other eyes, which I saw in South Florida. So thank you very much. And my husband thanks you too.
Next, we have Karen Mikowski.
Yes, I would like to also reiterate and thank the city. I thank the city council. I thank all the city council, and I wish Mr. Kravitz would also join them at the table instead of being back there. I think I'm very proud of all of you standing here listening. Yes, the city and all of us, as well as you, are concerned about this. I am very thankful for the updates on the website. And all of the information. My background, I'm a chemist, and I, like the professional engineer, I support this every day, Monday through Friday of my job. My company that I work for has a testing instrument, so I assist with PFAS all the time. In my daily job. So I sent an email in, and my request is, what is our test method? Because there's two different test methods. You could do mass spec. Well, it's actually LC mass spec is the predominant one. And then combustion IC. My company does combustion IC, which is the total. You usually want to do the total amount as opposed to the other ones are specie. You can speciate exactly where your component is coming from. As a municipality, you don't really know the point source unless you're going to do litigation, then the point source or the specific species can be traced back. Now going back to what my questions were is, yes, we all want a quick solution, but as we've known and as we've heard great resources and information of local, specifically about our wells, I think we need to take not a quick and fast solution, but a smart, long, thought out, all of the stakeholders, everything that can be affected. Primarily is what happens if for some reason our concentrations, our incoming water doubles, triples. How is that going to affect? Are we going to have then in 3 years, oops, sorry, we got another 30 million because we didn't think about this, the capacity. The other is, as we know, oops, this came about, these add-ons, you guys have all had builds, we've all had contracts of this add-on. So I would request, I think most of us, because we're paying the bill, that it is thought out. Everybody is thinking, what about this? What about this? Have we thought about this? As somebody said, this is a potential. What would a sinkhole happen to our water and our well? How would that impact? Now, back a couple years, we don't want to think about this. Mosaic had a sinkhole. Now, part of Mosaic, their fertilizer, that is a organic fluoride component. Tampa Water, when this did happen, they had to shut off that well pulling in because they didn't want to pull that water when that sinkhole did happen and their water was put into aquifer. So that is something I think we should consider. Now, the next thing is that City of Tampa wants to do pure water. So what is pure water going to do? It's going to take our sewer water. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a nice word because we all said bad word. Our sewer water and put it below our aquifer. Now, as the one lady says, how is that going to permeate up? So I think we should consider that. And then we all want to develop and we all want economic prosperity. I really would think that we now realize well protection and our water and our aquifer is number one. So when we get businesses, I really think we all would say no to some businesses, because if that is going to be detrimental to our water source and ultimately our pocketbooks, then yes. And the one gentleman previously said, since it's so small, 4 parts per trillion, how can you accurately detect it? Our instruments, we can. It's a calibration, but a calibration, it has to be legit. I support many customers, and I constantly tell them, sorry, this is failing. Sorry, this is failing. This is what you need to do. And it's just part of a testing mechanism that you have to have. But with accurate calibration, with accurate detection, and proper experienced, this is advanced technology. So somebody off the street can't have it. You need to have a degreed chemist, if not master's degree. And even a master's degree, you have to have experience. I support many PhDs, and it doesn't always mean they know. So it is very much, a trained and learned skill. I believe I have everything, and I also sent emails, so if we could get a feedback, that would be great. Thank you.
Next, we have Meade Lewis.
Howdy. All right, so I took some notes here, and some of these are just things that I want to think about. Okay, this is a highly technical, highly scientific conversation, and when we're talking about these topics, science literacy quickly is going to become a problem. So one of the things that was discussed today was a 3-month pilot. Good science cannot happen in 3 months. This pilot, based off of my understanding, pilots like these need to be years long. You previously mentioned the epidemiology over a 30-year usage of these chemicals. No good epidemiology occurs in 30 years. I come from a family of PhDs. My wife is a PhD in immunology and infectious disease. I studied medicine. Okay, these chemicals are new to our environment, but we're still finding out just how horrible they are. And so also you mentioned a small scale pilot. Okay, that raises a lot of concerns because they're small scale pilots, and I mean, you all know what I do. I run a company for oil and gas infrastructure and technology, right? Small scale pilots are horrific at estimating long-term costs, both in maintenance and upfront capital expenditure. So what I'm suggesting is that we take a breath, all right, we all slow down. What we're talking about here is $40 million. If we divide that across all of the residents here, that's $1,400 per person. And, for some of us, that's fine. Here's $1,400. But for a lot of people here, it's not that easy. That's really painful to their families' food budgets, their families', electricity budgets, everything like that. So I'm just asking for us to tap the brakes a little bit. 70% of American cities are dealing with this exact same problem. 70%. How about we watch other cities fail first? Because there's going to be a lot of money that's spent by those 70% to try to fix this problem, and they are going to fail. And I cannot stand to watch Temple Terrace fall into that trap. Let's talk about this problem a little bit further. Did you know PFAS are now found in the snow on Everest? All right. And so these chemicals are everywhere. All right, they're everywhere. And then they're not all equal either. The F in PFAS stands for fluorine. Fluorine. Anyway, Gen X is darn near impossible to filter out. Darn near impossible to filter out. And so when we're talking about PFOAs, those are long chain molecules. Okay, you can do things like the carbon filters, and that's effective. Carbon filters effectively do jack for, excuse me, I'm probably not allowed to say that. They don't do much for Gen X, and then that also doesn't really address the problem of what chemical comes out next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. Because guess what? These chemicals are still being made, and the solution is make them smaller, aka make them harder to filter. So a solution that we buy today is probably not going to work for the stuff of tomorrow. And another concern that the chemist mentioned before is city growth. If we buy, I mean, everybody here is rooting for Temple Terrace, or you better be. All right, but the city hopefully grows. All right, in 5 years, we might have twice the population that we have today. And so if we buy a $40 million system, and a lot of these systems aren't linear. It's not just, oh, here's another $40 million, we can, support twice as many residents. That's typically not how these infrastructure projects work. And so it's a major concern. Long story short, okay, I don't want to waste money here. I want to make the right decision, and it's an incredibly difficult decision. And I want scientific literacy to be first and foremost in our minds while we're approaching this problem. All right. You know, I love each of you. I've had conversations with each of you, and I'm so proud to have you as our politicians through all this. You guys are crushing it. Thank you so much.
I have 2 forms and 1 person. Are you Mustafa Ismail? Okay.
Yeah, my name is Mustafa Ismail, and I'm resident of Temple Terrace for last 12 years. I have some residential rental properties here also. My most of the questions were answered and by detail by Jason on my telephone call. He called me back and he explained me everything, and some of my questions were answered here. There is only one question I have, that is the refrigerator filter is good, can reduce the PFAS, and we can drink it, and we can cook a meal with this water or not. Just this is the only my question. All other questions are answered. Thank you so much.
Jeannie, that was that particular group, correct? That was the, okay. So, let's just find the question here. So I think Ms. Mihalski asked about this might be one for Ed, 2 different test methods, and which method did we use in our particular case here?
And we used the speciated test method, but we would like to get your card and your information. So we're open to, you know, new testers all the time, and especially a local one. So yes, we wanted to speciate the method, so that's what we used. At certain times we may use the other method, but that's the method the city used, and we proceeded with that same method.
Next question, I think you might as well just keep the mic. So the next question is, what happens, I think this was more of a future scenario to consider, what would happen if one of our incoming water contaminant levels rise or increase? I assume that's based upon we do the filtration system and then there's a future contaminant that rises potentially?
Right, and you know, the gentleman that spoke had a really good point, is there are other things on the horizon that are coming, and this is the one we're dealing with right now. So, and in fact, some of those full-scale facilities that you saw that we planned and designed, we planned and designed them with the future in mind, and that is the city also adopts that philosophy. Is we do want to, when we're making improvements to the to the water plant, we do want to look into the future to see what is coming next. And you know, we know some of those. There are pharmaceuticals. There's other forever chemicals out there that, you know, that are raising their head. And at the time we do the design, the thing is to make it flexible so that you have a technology that can adapt to those future. But you know, what he was talking about are things that are really hard to remove. And one of them was the Gen X one, and luckily we don't have that. But yeah, if you got the Gen X one, then we're talking about a more difficult treatment process. So, you know, it's going to be, we take it as it comes, and we're going to tackle it one item at a time, but keeping the eye on the other things that could come in the future, right? I mean, you know, we could pilot longer, we could pilot test longer. There's been a lot of pilot work out there already, and we just felt it was in the city's best interest to utilize the previous studies and launch us into more action-oriented solutions. This PFAS has been studied for the last 15 years. I could list 100 plus pilot tests, studies, things like that, probably 50 in Florida, right? So, you know, it's been well studied. We understand the treatment removal processes, and you know, we think it's in the city's, let's say, most cost-efficient manner to proceed in this way. So obviously, there's other ways to proceed. You know, we could study for 2 years or keep a pilot running for a longer scale. That just costs more money, right? So we're open to doing that, but you know, is that going to get you much more? You know, I don't know. So we understand how to remove it. We understand what it takes. We've got full-scale treatment plants operating that have these same exact processes, that have 10, 15 years of history, right, operating. So we understand the treatment processes. Some of the things we may not understand are the chemicals coming down the pike, but, you know, we're just going to have to tackle them one at a time as they come, right? I mean, so, that's just, we can't design for something we don't know, right? I mean, so that's just how it's going to have to happen.
And I think to pick up on Ed's comment right now, I think that goes back to the whole looking at, or at least analyzing it, regionalization issue. You know, if there's a way that working together with our fellow utilities, we can come up with solutions, we might be better prepared for those future chemicals as we go forward. Another question here was, have we thought out what if there is a sinkhole, and how would this impact our wells in the process?
Right, and that kind of situation would be catastrophic, let's just say. But we do have 10 wells, so we can shut certain ones down, and they are spread across the city. But that's where the woman that spoke earlier about putting deep Florida and aquifer wells in may be a good idea, you know, to get a better protected, more reliable source that's not as susceptible to contamination or sinkholes, right? So, you know, that is definitely a consideration.
And I think Mr. Lewis mentioned the notion of the growth in our system. So right now, our treatment, we do about 4 to 5 million gallons per day on average, and we are permitted to go up to 9 million. So that's our top end capacity. Envisioning if the city were to grow substantially, to get to 9 million, that'd be quite a fair amount of growth. Ed, is there some sort of like a modular increase in a system? Could you put something in today for a 5 million gallon system and later on add to it, or is that not a possibility?
No, that's exactly how we do it, because a lot of these PFAS treatment removal processes are modular. I showed you the pressure vessel, right? Each one of those pressure vessels treats 1.4 million gallons a day. So if you need 2.8, you're getting 2 pressure vessels. If you need 2.8 in the future, you're going to leave a spot to put 2 more in when you need it, right? Same thing with reverse osmosis. They come in skids. You can give them 1 million gallon a day skids, 2 million gallon a day skids, 500,000 gallon a day skid. So you can line them up and plan for the future, so that you put in the 5 MGD now, and you have space to go to the 9 MGD in the future. That is one thing that is at a premium with your water plants, is there is not a lot of space there, and there's a possibility we may have to acquire some land to install some of these treatment facilities. But once we know what they are and what they look like, we'll have a better idea.
And the last question I had here was from Mr. Ismail about the refrigerator filters being, whether they're appropriate enough for us.
Yeah, I was going to let Jason answer that one.
So the refrigerator filters, there's an NSF rating on the filters. So you want to look at the NSF rating and make sure that it is compliant with the standards for removing PFAS, or at least limiting the exposure to it.
Mr. Mustafa, to help you, so we've got the standards right here on the screen in terms of the NSF and ANSI standards 53, and that would probably be applicable, I would think, because those are GAC type systems, I believe, right? Yeah. Sparlow, are we going to move on to the next group? Oh, sorry. Is it safe to... I'm sorry. Whether it was safe to drink and cook with from the refrigerator filter? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question. What I wrote down, I don't have, is it safe to... So, was the question, is it safe to drink and cook with? I think those have been addressed. We talked about that already several times. Sure. So actually, Ed, why don't you?
Yes. Well, the fact is that your water is currently above the proposed standards for PFAS that will be enforced in 2031, right? So if you can judge safety on educating yourself, because I won't be able to make that assessment, but we've provided everything that we think you need here to protect yourselves, right? And make drinking the water safe. We did not see that in the sampling results I saw, so I did not see that. I saw non-detectable. So if you want to forward those results, yeah, we can take a look at those.
Okay. There we go. Just need to make sure we've been doing great so far. We need to make sure we stick with it and not start. I don't want to lose control of the meeting by having questions from the seats. So one at a time, everybody can talk. If you have more questions and you've already spoken, the next round you can speak again. We're going to make sure all your questions are answered, but we do want to do it in an orderly fashion. So thank you.
So Brian, correct me, do we need to take a break because of the feed to synchronize? Do we need to take a break because of the feed? Are you having? Okay, folks, we're going to take a break here. Let's say 10 minutes. So please feel free to use the restrooms, make yourselves comfortable, and we will come back.